Hello students and welcome back to Standard 10 English Kumar Bharati Unit 4 4.2 lesson The Luncheon Part 2. In the first part of the lesson we have learned that the narrator he invites the lady guest to a very expensive and a fancy restaurant Foyot's, and there he orders for the lady guest the most expensive dishes like the salmon fish, the caviar, but for himself he just orders a cheapest dish, that is the mutton chops. Now let's continue learning what happens in the second part of the lesson, the luncheon. I see that you are in a habit of eating a heavy luncheon. I am sure it's a mistake. Why don't you follow my example and just eat one thing? I couldn't possibly eat anything more unless they had some of those giant asparagus. I should be sorry to leave Paris without having some of them. So now the lady, she is warning the narrator about his habit of eating a heavy luncheon. Now student, you all know who had a heavy luncheon, whether it was a lady guest or it was a narrator. The lady already she had the most expensive dishes like the caviar and the salmon fish, and the poor narrator he had ordered for him just a very cheapest dish on the menu, and that was the mutton chop. But when he was having it, she said that you are in a bad habit of eating a heavy luncheon, she said, and it's a big mistake, she said. She further adds up that you should follow my example. See, how do I eat only one thing at a time? You should follow the same thing. But if at all I get some giant asparagus, then I would eat something, she said. That means she still had a desire to have something after eating the most two expensive dishes. Now she has a desire that if at all she gets a giant asparagus, she would be happy. Otherwise, coming to Paris and not eating or not having asparagus, she said, I will feel sorry for it. So before leaving Paris, she has a desire to have the giant asparagus. Now asparagus, these are also very expensive dishes, and asparagus, it is the tender young shoots of the plants which are eaten as the vegetable. So now she has a desire to have a giant asparagus. My heart sank. I had seen in the shops and I knew that they were horribly expensive. My mouth had often watered at the sight of them. I'm not in the least hungry, my guest sighed. But if you insist, I don't mind having some asparagus. I ordered them. Aren't you going to have any? No, I never eat asparagus. Now, the narrator's heart sank, that is, he became disappointed, he became very sad when the lady told her desire that she want to eat the asparagus. Why the narrator got disappointed? Because he knew very well that asparagus was beyond the reach of what the narrator would have even imagined. Just like the caviar, just like the salmon fish, even the asparagus were going to be very, very expensive. And at this asparagus, the narrator, he had just seen them in the shops. And even he had a desire to have the asparagus. But he had seen them only kept displayed in the shops. Only at the sight of the asparagus he used to get tempted. Even he wanted to have from many years asparagus, but his pocket did not allow him to do so because they were not affordable for him to buy the asparagus. Now the lady further she says that actually I am not hungry anyway, but if the narrator, that is if you insist me or you persuade me or if you force me, then she said I won't mind having some asparagus. So now unwillingly the narrator orders for the asparagus. Now the time when he orders the asparagus, the lady, just as a formality, she asks the narrator, why don't you order for yourself also? Won't you eat the asparagus? At that time, the poor narrator, though he wanted to have it, he just said that I never eat asparagus anytime. We waited for the asparagus to be cooked. Panic seized me. It was not a question now of how much money I should have left over for the rest of the month, but whether I had enough to pay the bill. It would be mortifying to find myself 10 francs short and be obliged to borrow from my guest. I knew exactly how much I had, and if the bill came to more, I made up my mind that I would put my hand in my pocket and with a dramatic cry start up and say it had been picked. Of course, it would be awkward if she had not money enough either to pay the bill. Then the only thing would be to leave my watch and say I would come back and pay it later. Panic seized me. It means sudden uncontrollable fear or anxiety. Mortifying, it means feeling embarrassed or ashamed. Now, when the asparagus was being cooked, the narrator was completely scared now. He was totally in a fear and the anxiety now. He was completely scared now because now when the lady had ordered for the expensive asparagus, he was worrying not about how much money he would left with him to spend for it the whole month, but now he was worried whether he will be able to pay the bill, and he started feeling very despair. He started feeling embarrassed, mortifying. It means he started feeling embarrassed or ashamed of himself whether he would be able to pay the bill or not. So then the narrator started feeling ashamed, and he thought, or he felt that he might find short of 10 francs to pay the bill. And if such a condition occurs, then he thought to himself, I will be obliged, or I will take the favor from a lady guest and take the 10 francs from her. That would be really embarrassing, but I have to do. But if at all, even my lady guests do not have the money, then what would have happened? So the narrator started making all the plans into his mind to escape the worst situation if he was not able to pay the bill. So he decided, in case he would not be able to manage to pay the bill, then he started thinking of the plans. First thing, he said that I will suddenly get up, I will put my hand into my pocket, and I will act in such a way that my pocket has been picked and now I have no money to pay the bill. Or secondly, if at all, even my lady guest would have no 10 francs to give the payment or to pay the bill, then in that condition what I have to do is that I would leave back my watch to the cashier and I would tell him that I will come back after a few days, give the cash back to you and take my watch. So all such a type of you can say plan he was making into his mind to escape the worst situation. The asparagus appeared. I watched her thrust them down her throat in large mouthfuls. At last she finished. Coffee? I said. Yes, just an ice cream and coffee, she answered. I was past caring now. So I ordered coffee myself and ice cream and coffee for her. You know, there's one thing I thoroughly believe in, she said, as she ate the ice cream. One should always get up from a meal feeling one could eat a little more. Are you still hungry? I asked faintly. The waiter got the asparagus. The lady guest started eating the asparagus and the narrator watched her forcing the dish down her throat in the large quantity that was large enough even to fill her into her mouth. Now when she was eating the asparagus, just as a formality, the narrator asked her for a coffee. But immediately she replies, she says, yes, coffee and ice cream too. I'll have both. Now the narrator ordered for himself a coffee, an ice cream and a coffee for the lady. Now the narrator has completely stopped giving attention to the bill and whatever consequence he would face after the time he will get the bill on his table. The narrator was past caring now. He had stopped thinking about what the bill would be and what would happen if at all he was not able to pay the bill. Now the lady friend, while she was enjoying the ice cream, she said to the narrator that she thoroughly believes in one thing, in one fact, that one should always get up from the meal feeling one could eat a little more. Now, when she said this, the narrator thought that even now she is feeling hungry. Even he had a doubt that even after having the caviar, the salmon fish, the asparagus, coffee, and ice cream, and when she said that one should always get up from the meal feeling one could eat little more, by this remark, the narrator thought even at this time she is still feeling hungry. So the narrator or the writer felt that his friend, that is his guest, was still hungry, and so he asked her, was she still hungry or was she want to have something more? Very faintly he asked this question to the lady guest. Oh no, I'm not hungry, you see. I don't eat luncheon. I have a cup of a coffee in the morning and then dinner. But I never eat more than one thing for luncheon. I was speaking for you. Oh, I see. Then a terrible thing happened. While we were waiting for the coffee, the head waiter came up to us bearing a large basket full of huge peaches. But surely peaches were not in season then. Lord knew what they cost. I knew a little later, for my guest going on with a conversation absent mindedly took one. So when the narrator asked the question to the lady that was she still hungry even after having her ice cream, he asked the question, are you still feeling hungry? She says no, but further she adds that I don't eat luncheon. I have just a cup of coffee in the morning and a dinner, but I never eat more than one thing for the luncheon. Now we all know what all dishes she had ordered till now, and every time she used to say only one sentence, I do not have anything for the luncheon. Previously she told in the beginning, and later on she says I do not have more than one thing for the luncheon. And likewise she has ordered the expensive dishes of the Foyot restaurant. First she ordered for the salmon fish, then for the caviar, the giant asparagus, the coffee and the ice cream. And every time she used to say only one sentence, I never eat more than one thing for the luncheon. And further she says that I was speaking for you. Are you still feeling hungry? And then something terrible thing happened. And while they were talking to each other, something terrible happened. The waiter came to the author's table bearing a large basket full of huge peaches. And since the restaurant bill had already shot past its limit, the author was worried what the cost of the unseasonable peaches would be and what extent the bill would go to, while the narrator was still lost in his thought of how to make the payment for the bill. The lady guest, absent mindedly, she took one of the peaches from the basket, which was, you see, you have filled your stomach with a lot of meat. My one miserable little chop, and you can't eat any more. But I have just had a snack, and I shall enjoy a peach. The bill came, and when I paid it, I found that I had only enough for a quite inadequate tip. Her eyes rested for an instant on the 3 francs. I left for the waiter and I knew that she thought me mean. But when I walked out of the restaurant, I had the whole month before me and not a penny in my pocket. So the writer's friend, that is the lady, she told the narrator that the narrator had filled his stomach with lot of meat. Now you all know that the narrator had only one cheapest dish, and that was the mutton chop. Even though the lady guest, she's telling to the narrator that he has fully loaded his stomach with the meat and he had eaten a lot of meal, she said, and but on the other hand she had had a very light snack. And what was the light snack? We all know so many dishes she had ordered and she has eaten so many dishes. In fact, of the reason she is saying that you have overloaded your stomach, she said, you have overeaten, but I had only a light snack, she said, and so she could enjoy a peach because already she has picked up one peach from the basket. So by the time the bill came now, and the narrator paid the bill. He was able to manage to pay the bill, but he did not have sufficient money for the tip to be given to the waiter, and thus he was able to keep only 3 francs as a tip, which were only the money which was left with him. But the writer's lady friend, she thought that the narrator was very mean, as he has put only a small tip after they have made a large bill. That was only a small tip he had given to the waiter. So after paying the bill and giving the tip to the waiter, the narrator walked out of the restaurant. But now he had the whole month without any penny left in his pocket. Follow my example, she said as we shook hands, and never eat more than one thing for luncheon. I'll do better than that, I retorted. I'll eat nothing for dinner tonight. Humorous, she cried gaily, jumping into a cab. You're quite a humorist. So now, when both of them were out of the restaurant, the lady told the narrator as she shook her hand, and she said to the narrator, never eat more than one thing for the luncheon, she said. Follow my example. And in a reply, the narrator retorted means he replied in a very angry manner. He said that he would not eat anything for the dinner that night. But the guest, that is the lady, thought that the narrator is telling this out of a humor. Actually, he was very angry. Why? Because the lady had eaten so many of the things and he had only had a very cheapest dish. Even though she told to the narrator that he was overloading his stomach and she had just had a snack. And so she's saying that follow my example. Have only one thing for a luncheon. And due to this reason, and also the bill what he had to pay, that was very high, beyond his imagination, beyond his reach, and so he was very upset. And so when the lady told him that do not have more than one thing for the luncheon, he got very upset, he got very angry. I retorted means he replied very angrily that he would not eat anything for the dinner that night. He said this out of anger, but the guest, that is the lady, thought that the narrator is telling this out of a humor, that he would not eat anything for the dinner. So she said gaily, cried gaily means she said in a very cheerful manner while getting into the cab that you are quite a humorist. But I have had my revenge at last. I do not believe that I am a vindictive man. But when the God take a hand in the matter, it is understandable to observe the result with satisfaction. Today she weighs 21 stone. So the narrator, he comes out of the flashback. Now after the 20 years, the narrator, he feels that the author, he has a sweet revenge. The woman who had terrorized him by ordering the most expensive dishes in the Foyot restaurant and making a very heavy bill which was beyond his reach to pay the bill. Now he feels that because this lady had troubled me that time, God has taken the matter in his hand. Now he is feeling satisfied. But he says that I am not a vindictive man. That means I am not a revengeful person, he said. But see, God has taken the matter in his hand, he said now. Now he is feeling satisfied because his sweet revenge has been fulfilled now. Now the lady, she has turned to be overweight. She weighs 21 stone. 21 stone, it means in pound if we talk, she must be weighing 294 pounds. And in kg, approximately 134 kg. So students, this lesson Luncheon, it is an example of a dramatic irony where the lady guest keeps repeating a single dialogue throughout the lesson, and that is, I never eat more than one thing. But she behaves in an exact contradictory manner. She keeps on eating excessively. So the student, this is the end of the lesson, the Luncheon. I hope you all have understood the lesson well. Thank you.